The Bernie Sanders 2020 campaign has kicked off some big news this week with the announcement that they've hired some 15 new top campaign staffers. And among those 15, ladies and gentlemen, fully 10 of them identify as female. Possibly actual biological females, and that, as the press release pointed out, that a lot of the people on Bernie Sanders' staff are not only female, but also women of color. And Stephen Green, I guess the first thing that occurred to me in this was your progressive candidate, a socialist candidate, a Democrat officially identifying as. What took you so long? Why is it in 2019 before you're making this big announcement that you're, trying to bring some parity to your campaign staff?
Yeah, I mentioned this in the backstage episode, which, by the way, is available only to BillWhittle.com members. So if you want to hear what we really say behind the scenes, you got to go over to BillWhittle.com.
Behind your back.
You should do that right now. Oh, we say the most horrible things about you there. That George W. Bush had a cabinet that was less male and less white than Barack Obama's cabinet, at least during Obama's first term, which is where I remember the figure from. I don't know if that changed in his second term or not. I kind of doubt it did. And I think this goes really to the heart of the matter. It would at least appear, based on what we've seen, and oh, by the way, the same is true of Trump's cabinet, less male, less white than Obama's. So what would seem to be the case, and again, we've got a pretty small sample here, so maybe it's not, but based on the last almost 20 years, Republicans seem to be hiring the best person for the job. Whether that person happens to be male, female, black, white, whatever, they're going for the best person and not making a very big show of it, or there would have been a lot more awareness of these two facts about Bush and Trump that I just shared with you. Democrats, on the other hand, seem to say, oh man, we got to hire some women quick because we're going to look really bad if we don't. And if it turns out that they're hiring really smart and capable women, well, that's good, because I actually believe in equality in employment, and if women aren't getting the job because they were getting overlooked because of their sex, I didn't say gender, and I won't, then that's wrong. And it's good to help people who are qualified for the job to get that job. I've got no problem with that kind of outreach whatsoever. On the other hand, if Bernie Sanders is doing this outreach to women to run his campaign who are not actually qualified, and he's only hiring them because of their sex, and as a result, he's going to hurt his own campaign? Isn't that awesome?
So, Bill Whittle, I want to read you a little bit from this story that I saw that was on a website called Refinery 29, and this is one of those females, the deputy campaign manager that Bernie Sanders hired. She said, it's this idea that you can't have a campaign about a democratic socialist, about supporting marginalized people and dismantling the patriarchy without having people who've experienced this our whole lives. And then another, one of the organizing directors nationally said, personnel is policy, so having a diverse leadership team and having women in leadership was important for Bernie to do. I guess the question occurs to me, Bill, is why is a conscientious effort to find females to put in important positions in your campaign or in your administration suddenly a good thing when Mitt Romney's campaign made a conscientious effort to do that and literally had binders of female candidates that they wanted to consider for these positions? That was considered a risible thing. That was a mockable thing.
It's enough to make a fellow think there's some kind of bias in the news media. Where do you start with this? Bernie Sanders, who famously talked about how evil capitalism is and how homeless people and so on, he has 3 houses. There really comes a point, honestly, where you just see good people cannot really fathom how somebody could be just so rotten. It's the idea that there's so there's got to be some other explanation for why they're so rotten. But the actual explanation is they're rotten. And what I mean by that is Hillary Clinton was going to ride the presidency on the Republican war on women until Donald Trump had the stagecraft genius to put those rape victims up front. That was the end of that. But she paid her female staffers less than her male staffers, and so what I keep coming back to with this, Scott, is this sense of in order to have this many contradictions, you have to be a person without character. You cannot let the fact that you're running on a campaign of men make more than women, and then I pay my female employees less. And Bernie can't run on the evils of capitalism and still have 3 houses. Good, decent people can't do that.
Hang on, Bill. I have to jump in here.
Sure.
You're repeating just a filthy smear of a lie about Bernie Sanders. He does not own 3 houses. He has 1 house and 2 dachas.
Ah, well, that's useful because most of his campaign people and his followers are illiterate as well. So 2 dachas probably means 2 little dogs that he has at his big house.
That's right.
So look, I mean, I guess what I'm saying on this is, if I ever found myself in a situation where what I was talking about was at complete odds to what I was doing, I would have to change one or the other. You know, I just couldn't do. I just couldn't. I couldn't live with it.
Yeah.
And so for him to get on this high horse and say we're hiring a bunch of women, it's like, wow, what a freaking trailblazer you are, Bernie. You know, I really admire that. I haven't.
Well, it was his people, in fact, probably in his youth, when he was part of the early progressive movement, that it got the women the right to vote at all.
Well, that's right. He was when he was a young man. He basically would sit around and sit on Abe Lincoln's knee, and listen to stories about how to free people. This hypocrisy is self-illuminating, and we need to go at it. We need to go at it directly. And when I say directly, I don't mean just pointing out the hypocrisy of Bernie and all of these other multimillionaires that's saying, movie stars saying we need to raise taxes and I'm going to pay the most taxes because I'm in the top tax bracket. Well, your production company pays for everything. You don't pay any. They don't make a check out to you, Matt Damon, for $10 million. You make out a check to MD Enterprises, and so this kind of contradiction just exists, and we have to go to the moral heart of it, and that is, what kind of person could lie about these kind of things in terms of, this is what I do and this is what I believe. What does it say about them? And we're just unwilling to face the fact that they could just be that rotten and low, but they are, and we need to call them that.
Well, I have a very tiny bit of practical experience with a similar situation. As some of you may know, I ran for a local office back in Pennsylvania, and the first time I ran for office, I had a consultant. They have these people, that's all they do. They run people's campaigns. And so somebody recommended me to this campaign consultant who then was supposed to run my campaign because I had a full-time job and I couldn't be running my campaign. During the course of that campaign, that consultant brought in somebody to organize an event for me. And the first time I saw Kyle, who was a woman named Kyle, the first time I saw her, she was standing in a dress and heels in the mud, planting a sign for a fundraising party with some balloons on it that I was having. And she is out there, dressed to the nines, but personally, wading in and doing the grunt work. For the rest of that campaign, she hung on as kind of the grunt work doer. And the next time I ran for office, I called her up and I said, I'd like you to run my campaign. And she said, well, I've never run a campaign before. And I said, I'm not looking for somebody who's run a campaign before. I'm looking for somebody I can trust with my reputation. Yeah. And what I found from Kyle was that I could set her loose in any group with no supervision and not have to worry a bit that I was going to be misrepresented in any way. I knew that my good name was safe with her. And I actually called a congressional campaign manager who was, by the way, those guys are full-time because the elections are every 2 years. So congressional campaign managers are all the time on. And I called him up and I said, can you think of any reason why I shouldn't hire Kyle to run my campaign? And he said, really, the work that most of these guys do is not that hard. The hard thing is having integrity and being willing to put others' needs in front of your own. And she's clearly demonstrated that. And Kyle ran a fantastic campaign. She worked harder than anybody I've ever seen. But I'll be honest with you about this part of the business. Most of the people in this game are men. They are people who have started these little consultancies and then grown them. They're usually very small businesses that kind of hire out contract workers for campaign purposes. And because of the nature of that, it's hard for a woman to break in. And so Kyle was probably likely to be relegated to, kind of being a helper in every campaign because she wasn't considered to be among that elite group. And I think that there is Republicans, especially who are running for office, do themselves a disservice if they don't try to plumb the depth chart a little bit and see who's available, somebody who's down there in the ranks who's been doing the hard work and who you can trust, who can represent you in your campaign. So I don't think Bernie Sanders is doing this. I don't think Bernie Sanders chose these 10 women out of 15 choices. And by the way, when you announce 15 hires and 10 women, that's not all the people he's going to hire for this campaign. It was specifically done at this time, so 2/3 of them would appear to be women. If he announced all the hires that he's going to do over the next 2 months. Sorry. And anyway, so I would just say for Republicans, I don't think you need to go strutting and crowing and preening about all the women you've hired, but I do think you need to broaden the scope of your search so that you don't miss some people who could really serve you well and who would be trustworthy advocates and maybe below the average, down the ladder, so to speak, from the average campaign consultant, 99% of whom are snakes, but who is a good-hearted person who will work hard and represent you well.
For Scott Ott, for Bill Whittle, I'm Scott.
Oh, that was me. Sorry.
That was you.
We'll cut this together, Mark. For Stephen Green and Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible. I thought I was answering Steve's question again.
I forgot what segment.
Seemed like.
I'd like to leave that in, please, Mark.
No, I'd like to take that out, please, Mark.
I'd like to leave it in, please.
Take it out.
I think it stays.
I think it stays.